Before you dismiss this as coincidence, pause. Not because I ask you to believe anything yet, but because something quieter than belief has already leaned toward you. There are moments when truth does not shout, it waits. It waits until the room is empty, the noise has thinned, and the mind, tired of pretending it knows everything, finally loosens its grip. This is one of those moments. Not because you are special in the way the world flatters, but because you are particular in the way truth requires. A key fits only one lock, and the fact that it turns there does not make the lock proud, it makes it honest. Most messages are broadcast. They are designed for crowds, shaped to be swallowed quickly and forgotten just as fast. This one was not made that way. It was hidden, not out of spite, but out of necessity. For if it had been placed in plain sight, it would have been trampled by haste, mocked by cleverness, or diluted until it meant nothing at all. Certain truths survive only when they travel by whisper, when they pass hand to hand in the dark, when they are discovered rather than announced. You were not meant to stumble upon this by accident. You were meant to arrive here by a series of small obediences, choices so ordinary they hardly felt like choices at all. You may wonder why you, of all people, should be addressed like this. The temptation is to imagine a grand compliment hidden in the question, but that would be a mistake. The reason is simpler and more unsettling. You are listening. Not perfectly, not constantly, but enough. Enough to feel that familiar ache when something rings true and yet threatens the comfortable arrangement of your life. Enough to sense that the world you were handed, its definitions of success, power, and happiness, does not quite explain the weight you carry when you are alone. The message does not come because you are flawless, it comes because you are reachable. There is a strange mercy in being overlooked. When everyone else is distracted by the obvious, the essential slips quietly past them. While they chase the spectacular, the necessary waits in the corner, patient and unadorned. Many have trained themselves to ignore that corner. They prefer the safety of agreed opinions, the warmth of belonging that comes from repeating what everyone else already believes. But you have felt the cost of that safety. You have noticed how easy answers shrink the soul, how borrowed convictions grow thin under pressure. Somewhere along the way, you learned that truth is not always popular, and popularity is almost never a reliable guide. This message was hidden because it demands more than agreement. It demands response. Agreement can be nodded through, archived, and forgotten. Response rearranges furniture. It interferes with plans. It insists on being lived out in the small, inconvenient hours when no one is watching. If this had been given to everyone at once, most would have treated it as an interesting idea. Only a few would have recognized it as a summons. And summons are dangerous things. They do not ask whether you feel ready. They reveal whether you are willing. You may feel a resistance rising even now, a sensible voice reminding you of past disappointments, of promises that led nowhere, of hopes that asked too much and delivered too little. That voice has earned its place. It is the product of experience, not cowardice. But experience, for all its usefulness, can become a jailer if we allow it to decide in advance what is possible. The hidden message does not deny your disappointments, it counts them. It knows how often you have tried to do the right thing quietly and watched louder, lesser things be rewarded instead. It knows how patience can feel indistinguishable from futility when the days stretch on without explanation. Yet there is a difference, subtle but decisive, between waiting that drains you and waiting that prepares you. The first leaves you smaller, more cynical, more convinced that nothing truly matters. The second sharpens you. It teaches you to notice details others miss, to endure silence without filling it with noise, to recognize the weight of a moment before it announces itself. Those who are being prepared often feel delayed, as though life itself has misplaced their file. But delay is not always denial. Sometimes it is protection, sometimes instruction, sometimes the slow alignment of things that must meet at exactly the right angle. If you are unsettled, that is no accident. Comfort rarely accompanies the approach of something real. Comfort smooths. Reality presses. The hidden message does not flatter your ego or excuse your failures. It tells you, instead, that you are more responsible than you have been led to believe, and more helped than you have dared to hope. It insists that your choices, especially the small unseen ones, carry a significance you have underestimated, not because the universe revolves around you, but because obedience, once given, sets other things in motion that you may never fully trace. So stay with this discomfort. Do not rush to resolve it or dress it up in language that makes it harmless. Let it remain sharp for a moment. Let it question your assumptions about what counts as important, about what kind of life is truly safe, about whether being chosen always looks like being applauded. The message was hidden to protect it from those who would misuse it, and to protect you from encountering it before you were able to bear its weight. Now that it has found you, it does not promise ease, but it does promise meaning, and meaning, once tasted, has a way of changing the flavor of everything that follows. There is a moment in every serious life when a person realizes that neutrality is a myth. For a long time we comfort ourselves with the idea that we can stand aside, observe, weigh options indefinitely, and remain untouched by consequence. Yet even refusal to choose becomes a choice in time, and often the most decisive one. What you have sensed, perhaps without words, is that you are no longer permitted the luxury of drifting. The hidden message presses precisely here, not to accuse, but to awaken. It reveals that waiting without intention slowly trains the soul to accept less than it was made for. Many people imagine that being called, chosen, or set apart must feel dramatic. They expect thunder, clarity without effort, certainty without cost. Instead, what arrives is often a quiet insistence that will not leave you alone. It follows you into ordinary moments, into routines that once felt sufficient. You notice a restlessness you cannot blame on boredom alone. Familiar pleasures lose their shine. Old explanations sound rehearsed, even dishonest when repeated. This is not because life has grown meaningless, but because meaning has begun to ask more of you than convenience allows. You have likely discovered that the hardest battles are not fought against obvious evils, but against comfortable half-truths. It is easy to reject what is clearly wrong. It is far more difficult to question what is merely incomplete. The world offers many substitutes for purpose: busyness, recognition, endless improvement of the surface self. These things are not evil in themselves, but they become dangerous when they distract us from the deeper question: what exactly am I responsible for? Not what am I capable of in theory, nor what could I become under perfect conditions, but what has been placed within my reach now. The hidden message insists that responsibility is personal before it is public. Long before you're asked to influence others, you are asked to govern yourself. This is where many turn away, not out of rebellion, but out of fatigue. Self-governance requires attention, and attention is costly in an age that trains us to scatter it everywhere. To pay attention to your words, your habits, your quiet compromises, is to admit that your inner life matters, that it is not merely a private hobby, but the seedbed of every outward action. What you permit inwardly will eventually demand expression. There is also a warning here, though it is a gentle one. Those who sense they are meant for something often rush ahead of their own formation. They want the outcome without the shaping, the authority without the obedience that makes authority safe. But unformed strength does more harm than weakness ever could. The message was hidden not because it was fragile, but because you were. And fragility, when acknowledged, becomes the beginning of wisdom. Only the person who knows where they are weak can be trusted with weight. You may feel at times as though you are lagging behind others, those who seem confident, decisive, loudly certain of their place in the world. Yet confidence is not the same as clarity, and noise is not the same as conviction. Some people move quickly because they are running from silence. Others move slowly because they are listening. Listening always looks inefficient from the outside. It produces few visible results at first, and it offers no easy metrics by which to measure progress. But it has this advantage: when the moment comes to act, the listener acts whole, not fragmented. There is a particular loneliness that accompanies this path. not the loneliness of isolation, but the loneliness of restraint. You find yourself unable to fully join in certain conversations, certain ambitions, certain shortcuts that once seemed harmless. It is tempting to interpret this as loss, to believe you are missing out on life as it is meant to be lived. In truth, you are being spared a narrower life in exchange for a deeper one. The cost is real, but so is the gain. Depth always demands a willingness to forego some breadth. What you are being prepared for will not announce itself with perfect timing or complete instructions. You will be required to move with partial light, to act before you feel entirely ready, to trust that obedience clarifies vision, rather than waiting for vision to guarantee obedience. This is unsettling to a mind trained to demand certainty first. Yet no meaningful commitment, whether to truth, to love, or to vocation, has ever been sustained by certainty alone. It is sustained by faithfulness in the small, repeatable acts that shape character when enthusiasm fades. If this message unsettles you, it is because it refuses to leave you as you are while pretending to honor you. It treats you as capable of more, which is both an honor and a burden. You are not asked to become someone else, you are asked to become fully yourself, stripped of the excuses that have protected you from risk. This will require courage, but not the dramatic kind. It will require the quieter courage of consistency, of choosing rightly when no immediate reward is offered, of believing that unseen faithfulness is not wasted. So do not look for applause as confirmation, nor for opposition as proof of error. These are unreliable guides. Instead, watch for alignment, the slow, often unnoticed alignment between what you know to be true and how you choose to live. When that alignment begins to take shape, you will discover that the message was never meant to elevate you above others, but to anchor you more firmly in reality. And from that anchoring, strength grows, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that endures. There comes a point when a person realizes that knowledge alone has never transformed anyone. You may understand more than you once did, see through illusions that previously held you captive, and yet find yourself unchanged in the places that matter most. This discovery can be deeply frustrating because it exposes a gap between insight and obedience. The hidden message presses into this gap. It does not congratulate you for seeing clearly. It asks what you intend to do with what you see. Truth, once recognized, becomes a responsibility rather than a comfort. It is tempting to believe that awareness itself is progress. We collect ideas, analyze motives, diagnose problems, and mistake this mental activity for movement. But clarity that never descends into action slowly turns corrosive. It breeds impatience with others and cynicism toward oneself. You begin to feel superior in understanding and inferior in discipline, which is a miserable combination. The message you are encountering refuses to let you remain there. It insists that the smallest act done in alignment with truth outweighs the grandest intention left unrealized. You have likely noticed how easily the mind can argue its way out of obedience. It offers reasonable explanations, contextual excuses, and carefully worded delays. None of these sound like rebellion. They sound like wisdom. Yet wisdom that never risks itself in practice is only cleverness in disguise. The message challenges this habit gently but firmly. It asks whether your reasons for waiting are rooted in patience or in fear, whether your discernment has become a shield against commitment rather than a guide toward it. There is also the matter of cost, which no honest message can avoid. Obedience always costs something, even when it leads to joy. It costs the illusion of control, the comfort of remaining undefined, the safety of keeping options open indefinitely. Many people prefer regret to risk, because regret allows them to imagine a better version of themselves that was never tested. Risk, on the other hand, exposes who you actually are. The hidden message does not shame you for fearing this exposure. It simply tells you that growth will not occur without it. You may be waiting for a moment when obedience feels natural, even easy. That moment rarely arrives. What arrives instead is a choice between two kinds of discomfort, the discomfort of discipline and the discomfort of stagnation. One sharpens you over time, the other dulls you slowly. The message invites you to choose the former, not because it is heroic, but because it is honest. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom, it is the training ground where freedom learns how to stand. There is a misconception that obedience diminishes individuality, that submitting to truth erases personality. In reality, the opposite occurs. What erases personality is the constant imitation of whatever is rewarded in the moment. Obedience, when rightly understood, strips away borrowed identities and leaves behind what is essential. You become less reactive, less dependent on approval, less driven by comparison. This does not make you smaller, it makes you clearer. And clarity, though quieter than charisma, has a strength that endures. As you move from knowing to doing, you may feel exposed in new ways. Actions can be judged, intentions cannot. Once you step forward, you open yourself to misunderstanding, to criticism, even to failure that others can see. This vulnerability is unavoidable, but it is not meaningless. It teaches humility without humiliation and courage without arrogance. It reminds you that being chosen does not place you above error, it places you under instruction. There is also a strange peace that accompanies obedient action, even when outcomes remain uncertain. This peace does not come from success but from alignment. You sense sometimes faintly that you are no longer divided against yourself. Your words and your deeds begin, imperfectly but sincerely, to agree. This agreement does not eliminate struggle, but it removes a particular kind of exhaustion, the exhaustion of self-betrayal. When you stop arguing yourself out of what you know to be right, energy returns in unexpected ways. Do not expect immediate confirmation that you are on the correct path. Confirmation is often delayed precisely because it would tempt you to rely on results rather than faithfulness. The hidden message trains you to value integrity over outcome, to trust that what is right remains right, even when it appears ineffective. History is full of acts that seemed insignificant at the time and indispensable in retrospect. You will not always know which of your choices fall into this category, but that uncertainty does not lessen their weight. If you find yourself hesitating, remember that obedience is rarely about dramatic gestures. It is about consistency in the unremarkable. It is about choosing honesty when a small lie would be easier, choosing restraint when indulgence would go unnoticed, choosing perseverance when quitting could be justified. These CES do not make headlines, but they shape the kind of person who can be trusted when something larger is eventually required. The message was hidden because it cannot be consumed like information. It must be lived, and living it will change you in ways you cannot fully predict. You are not being rushed, but you are being invited to stop postponing the obvious. What you already know is sufficient to begin. The rest will be revealed, not to the curious observer, but to the willing participant who steps forward before certainty arrives. One of the most difficult truths to accept is that transformation is rarely sudden. We are drawn to stories of instant change because they spare us the long discipline of becoming. Yet most real change moves quietly, almost invisibly, reshaping us through repetition rather than revelation. The hidden message does not promise a dramatic turning point that solves everything at once. Instead, it speaks of a slower work, one that takes place beneath the surface, where roots grow before branches ever appear. This can feel disappointing to a mind trained to equate speed with significance, but slowness has its own kind of authority. You may have expected that once you began to listen, once you took a step of obedience, clarity would flood in, and uncertainty would vanish. What you encounter instead is often a deeper awareness of how unfinished you are. Old habits resurface, doubts grow louder. Progress feels uneven, sometimes imperceptible. This is not failure, it is exposure. The light that reveals the path also reveals the dust in the air. To confuse awareness of weakness with regression is to misunderstand how growth works. There is a particular patience required for this stage, and it is not the passive kind. Passive patience waits for circumstances to change. Active patience commits to faithfulness within circumstances as they are. The message calls you into the second. It asks whether you are willing to do the same small right things repeatedly, even when they no longer feel inspiring. Repetition can feel like stagnation when viewed from the inside, but it is precisely repetition that forms character. What you do consistently, not what you do occasionally, becomes who you are. You may notice a tension between who you sense you are becoming and who you still appear to be. This tension can be uncomfortable, even painful. It tempts you either to exaggerate your progress or to deny it altogether. Both responses are forms of escape. The message invites you to remain honest in the middle, acknowledging growth without pretending completion. Humility lives here, not as self-contempt, but as accurate self-knowledge. To know yourself truly is neither to despise nor to glorify, but to see clearly. There is also a temptation to compare your pace with that of others. Some seem to move faster, to gain recognition sooner, to experience visible breakthroughs while you labor in obscurity. Comparison, however, distorts perception. You never see the full cost of another person's progress, nor the hidden advantages that shape their path. More importantly, comparison distracts you from the specific work entrusted to you. The message you are receiving is not interchangeable, it fits your life as it is, with its particular constraints and possibilities. To measure it against another's journey is to misread it entirely. Hidden. Growth often feels like wasted effort because it lacks applause. When results are not immediately visible, the mind begins to question whether anything is happening at all. Yet some of the most decisive changes in a person's life occur without witnesses. Restraints practiced in private, disciplines maintained without recognition, quiet refusals to compromise. These shape a kind of strength that does not depend on being seen. This strength may go unnoticed for a long time, but when pressure comes, it holds. The message also reframes failure. Instead of treating failure as a verdict, it treats it as information. Failure reveals where formation is incomplete, where intention has outpaced discipline. This can be humbling, but it is also instructive. Those who refuse to learn from failure are condemned to repeat it. Those who learn without self-pity convert failure into wisdom. The message does not excuse your mistakes, but it does not weaponize them against you either. It insists that falling is not the same as quitting. There will be moments when you feel ordinary again, when the sense of being called fades into the background of daily responsibilities. This ordinariness is not a sign that you imagined everything. It is the environment in which most faithfulness is practiced. Grandeur is rare, fidelity is daily. The message was hidden because it speaks to this unglamorous reality, where the true measure of a life is not found in exceptional moments, but in the steady accumulation of right choices over time. As transformation unfolds slowly, you may discover that your desires begin to change before your circumstances do. What once attracted you may lose its pull. What once seemed insignificant may gain weight. This shift can be disorienting, because it leaves you out of step with your environment. Yet it is often the clearest sign that something real is happening. When desire changes, behavior eventually follows. The message works from the inside out, altering loves before it alters outcomes. Do not despise this gradual work. What grows too quickly often lacks resilience. The strength being formed in you is meant to endure, not merely to impress. You are being taught how to remain faithful when enthusiasm wanes, how to persist when progress is hidden, how to trust that unseen labor is not wasted. This kind of endurance cannot be rushed, and it cannot be borrowed from others. It must be learned through time and practice. The hidden message, then, is not an invitation to escape the ordinary, but to inhabit it differently. It calls you to remain present, to commit to the process even when it feels slow, to believe that becoming takes time because you are being shaped for weight. And weight, when it finally rests on a person, reveals whether what has been built beneath the surface is strong enough to hold. There is a final misunderstanding that must be set aside if the message is to be carried rightly, and it is this, that being chosen means being exempt. Exempt from struggle, from doubt, from ordinary limitations, from the quiet grind of responsibility. Nothing could be further from the truth. To be chosen is not to be removed from the human condition, but to be placed more firmly within it, with eyes open and hands unhidden. The hidden message does not lift you above others. It lowers you into a deeper seriousness about how life is actually lived. What changes, then, is not the presence of difficulty, but the meaning of it. Struggle is no longer interpreted as evidence of abandonment, nor success as proof of approval. Both become tools rather than verdicts. This shift is subtle, but it alters everything. When you stop reading every hardship as a sign that something has gone wrong, you gain a steadiness that circumstances cannot easily steal. You are no longer governed by constant emotional weather, because you have learned to locate your center somewhere deeper than feeling. There will be seasons when obedience feels costly and unrewarded. You may watch others prosper through shortcuts you have refused, hear them praised for compromises you chose not to make. The temptation here is not simply envy, but doubt that integrity truly matters, doubt that unseen faithfulness has any lasting value. The message answers this doubt without spectacle. It reminds you that the measure of a life is not taken at its most comfortable moment, but at its most pressured one. What you become when tested reveals what you have truly believed all along. Carrying this message forward requires restraint. It cannot be wielded as a badge of superiority or a weapon against others. The moment you use it to elevate yourself, it slips from your grasp. Truth carried with pride becomes distortion. You are not entrusted with this message to correct everyone else, but to govern yourself more carefully. Authority, when it comes, will arise naturally from consistency, not from declaration. People trust those whose lives quietly agree with their words. You may find that this path narrows rather than widens your options. Certain doors close not because you are unworthy, but because they would require you to become someone you are no longer willing to be. This narrowing can feel like loss, especially in a culture that equates freedom with unlimited choice. Yet choice without direction is not freedom. It is paralysis disguised as possibility. The message teaches you to value depth over range, fidelity over novelty. In doing so, it simplifies life without making it easy. There is also the matter of patience with others. As you grow more attentive to truth, you may become more aware of its absence elsewhere. This awareness can harden into judgment if you are not careful. The message guards against this by reminding you of your own unfinishedness. You are not ahead, you are in process. The patience extended to you must be extended outward, not as indulgence, but as hope. People change not when they are shamed into compliance, but when they are invited into something better by example. At some point, you will be required to act without the comfort of being hidden. The quiet formation gives way to visible responsibility. This transition can be unsettling, because visibility invites scrutiny, mistakes become public, motives are questioned. Yet hiding forever is not the goal. Hiddenness is preparation, not destination. The message was concealed so that it could be learned safely, but it is lived openly. When the time comes, you will discover that the private disciplines you thought no one noticed have become your strongest supports. You will also learn that endurance is not the same as hardness. To endure is not to numb yourself, but to remain responsive without being reactive. It is to feel disappointment without surrendering to despair, to experience joy without demanding that it last forever. This balanced strength is rare, and it is forged only through time and attention. The message trains you in this balance by repeatedly calling you back to what is essential when distractions multiply. There is a quiet confidence that emerges when a person stops negotiating with truth. This confidence does not announce itself, it steadies. It does not rush to speak, it listens. It does not demand recognition, it accepts responsibility. You may not notice this change as it happens, but others will feel it in your presence. They will sense coherence, a lack of pretense, a seriousness that is neither heavy nor forced. This is influence of the most durable kind. The hidden message, then, completes its work not by granting you certainty about the future, but by forming you into someone who can face the future without fear. You are not promised clarity in advance, only faithfulness in the present. Yet faithfulness, once practiced, has a way of illuminating the next step at precisely the moment it is needed. And so you move forward not as one who has mastered the path, but as one who has learned how to walk it, awake, responsible, and anchored in a truth that does not need to be shouted to be real. There is a peculiar tension in the human heart between longing and fear, a tension that is sharpened when one begins to sense that life carries a weight of purpose beyond the obvious. You have felt it, even if only vaguely, a stirring that refuses to be silenced, a pull towards something more than convenience or habit. The hidden message addresses this tension directly. It does not soothe it, nor do it explain it fully. It simply insists that you attend, that you do not dismiss the unease that signals the presence of something real. In ignoring it, you do not evade responsibility, you postpone it. Many people assume that destiny is revealed in dramatic moments, in sudden illuminations that leave no room for doubt. They imagine a grand unveiling, an unmistakable signal that says, "Now you are ready." Yet most destiny is quiet. It grows in the shadows of ordinary days, in small choices repeated with consistency, in the courage to act when no one is watching. The message you are receiving is hidden because it is subtle. Subtlety requires attention, and attention is scarce. Only those willing to notice, to reflect, to respond patiently, can follow its guidance without being misled by superficial distractions. You may have been tempted to believe that being chosen or set apart protects you from failure. On the contrary, it exposes you. It exposes you to the limits of your endurance, to the vulnerabilities you would rather ignore, to the weaknesses that pride conceals. This is not punishment, it is preparation. True readiness is forged in the recognition of imperfection, in the willingness to confront what you cannot control, in the humility to acknowledge what you do not yet understand. The hidden message does not flatter, it instructs. It measures your willingness, not your comfort. There is also the question of trust. How do you proceed when the guidance you receive is not entirely clear, when outcomes are uncertain, when risk seems unavoidable? The answer is not found in knowledge alone, nor in the accumulation of experience. It is found in faithfulness. Faithfulness is the deliberate choice to act rightly even when the result is unknown, to align behavior with principle rather than convenience, to endure the discomfort of waiting without surrendering to despair. This is the quality the message seeks to cultivate, because without it, even insight becomes a dangerous possession, capable of inflating the mind while leaving the heart unformed. You may notice a subtle impatience arising, a desire to see immediate signs of progress. This is natural, but it is also misleading. Impatience tempts you to shortcut formation, to choose expedience over integrity. Yet integrity requires patience because it operates on a timetable larger than any single moment. What is built quickly can crumble just as quickly. What is built gradually endures, because it is rooted not in appearances but in substance. The hidden message encourages you to trust the process, even when it feels slow, even when it seems unnoticed, even when the world praises others for speed while your own work remains unseen. There is also the challenge of solitude. To follow a hidden message is often to move against the tide of common expectation, to resist shortcuts and compromises that everyone around you takes for granted. This can be isolating. You may feel out of step with peers, with trends, with conventions. Yet this solitude is not absence, it is the space in which character is formed. True influence is rarely born in conformity, it is born in consistency, in fidelity, in the courage to be steady when the crowd is fleeting. Those who learn to inhabit this quiet space are the ones who carry vision with resilience. Mistakes will come inevitably. They are neither fatal nor irrelevant. They are data points revealing what remains unlearned, what assumptions were false, what pride still lingers. The message teaches you to treat failure not as shame, but as instruction. Each error that is examined and corrected becomes a brick in the foundation of understanding, a calibration for future decisions, a reminder that mastery is not in avoiding missteps, but in responding wisely to them. The hidden message protects you from ignorance, but it does not protect you from the lessons that experience alone can teach. Action, when it finally arrives, will demand courage of a quieter sort than you may expect. It is not the courage of bold declarations or dramatic gestures, but the courage of consistency, of perseverance, of maintaining integrity when it would be easier to compromise. The hidden message trains you in this courage by giving you time, by concealing the answer until you are ready to carry it, by allowing small tests that build strength rather than impress others. When the moment comes to act visibly, you will discover that the unseen preparation has equipped you for what appears impossible. The ultimate lesson embedded in this hidden message is that purpose and privilege are inseparable from responsibility. Being chosen does not exempt you from the ordinary demands of character, nor from the slow, often invisible work that makes extraordinary outcomes possible. To receive this message is to be reminded that every moment matters, that every choice has weight, that obedience and faithfulness are the currency of meaningful influence. It does not guarantee comfort, ease, or applause. It guarantees clarity of responsibility and the shaping of a life capable of enduring what is asked. The message, though hidden from others, is now present with you. Its task is to form, instruct, and direct in ways that cannot be replicated by mere observation or theory. You are not being called to spectacle, you are being called to substance. The work it requires is invisible to most, but the results, when they finally manifest, will be undeniable. What begins in hiddenness ends in strength. What is learned quietly prepares for action that cannot be ignored. This is the gravity of being chosen, the weight of what has been entrusted to you, and the necessity of carrying it faithfully, patiently, and with unwavering attention.